Hello, I'm Anna Marie Robertson, and I'm a candidate for the Masters of Educational Technology degree and an online teaching certificate at Boise State University. I'm currently an online mathematics teacher for Richard McKenna Charter High School in Idaho. I've held this position since 2000. I've seen many changes in the online realm of education over these years. Many people think that once you create an online course and put it online, that you're done. But I have the experience to tell you that this is not true. My courses are constantly changing and evolving to incorporate new technologies. This is what brought me to the EdTech program at Boise State. I felt as if I was being left behind in the educational technology dust, as it were. I just couldn't keep up with all the emerging technologies, and I felt like I had no standard to use to evaluate and assess these technologies, and to find best practices for their implementation. When I started this journey through the EdTech Master's program, I found the standard and the best practices I was seeking. Because I began my journey in the spring and not in the fall like most candidates, I was able to participate in an experimental course that has only been offered once. This course was EdTech 597, Teaching Math in Virtual Worlds. So my first experience with this master's program was in the virtual world setting of Second Life, where I'm known as Alexis Kamala. I had never experienced anything like this and had never even heard of virtual worlds prior to taking this course. It opened a whole new realm of learning experiences for me and introduced me to the concept of experiential learning. In a virtual world, one can be and do anything one desires. There is no death, and mistakes are just fun learning experiences. Following the experience in Second Life, I participated in the beginning course EdTech 501, Introduction to Educational Technology, in which I researched the topic of the impact of technology on teaching and learning. I knew there had to be a better way of learning than the old stand and deliver method that is still abundant in today's schools. Through this research, I was introduced to D.H. Jonasson, who believes that learning must be student-centered, and that the teacher must undergo a shift in pedagogical thinking to become more of a facilitator and a collaborator than a lecturer. I've long held this belief, but was unsure how to make the change. I reflected on my own online courses I've created over the past years and realized that they are all lecture-based, even though they're delivered online. I determined to somehow make the change in my thinking and delivery. While participating in EdTech 504, Theoretical Foundations of Educational Technology, I was again given the chance to do some research. This time, I chose to take a look at how the impact of using immersive worlds can affect mathematics education and pedagogy in a paper entitled Immersive Learning and Effects on Math Pedagogy. In this paper, I sought to answer four main questions. I wanted to know if established learning theories could be applied to emerging technologies, what the advantages and disadvantages of learning in an immersive virtual environment are, if virtual worlds have an effect on learning, motivation, and pedagogy, and finally, I wanted to know what the ramifications were of three-dimensional learning for math and for the pedagogy of teaching math concepts. In this paper, I was introduced to some very influential theorists, one of whom was Michelle Dickey. In my paper, Dickey explains the shift from an objectivist learning theory to a constructivist learning theory as a shift in paradigms of learning. She says that learners must have opportunities to explore and manipulate within their learning environment to aid in the construction of new knowledge. This seemed to be one of the pieces I was missing with my own online courses. The students couldn't explore and manipulate anything. This was a huge piece of my new pedagogy, and it turns out that it began to drive everything for me. I later participated in EdTech 532 Games and Simulations. This class was also taught totally in the realm of Second Life. I have never had so much fun while learning in all my life. All we did was play games. There were online games, board games, and even a very big role-playing game that encompassed our entire Second Life meeting space and all of my peers. I have never played in a role play before, It was the most intense feeling describable, and being able to put all of my feelings down in a blog at the time I was feeling them was an amazing experience. Prior to this, I had never blogged before. I can now see the importance of allowing a student the time to reflect when a project or game is over, and for allowing them to share their reflection with others. While I was involved in EDTECH 532 Games and Simulations, I was also asked to teach a series of technology courses at a local alternative school. I decided to test this theory of game-based learning on these students. I created 3 online courses that the students worked through using the concepts of game-based learning. They were allowed to choose the activities they wanted to participate in based on their own interests. And these are the 3 courses that I created. First, there was the computer apps course, then there was the multimedia training course, and then there was the web design training course. And in each of these courses, the students were on a starship, and different things were happening to them depending upon which course they were in. But in each course, there were a group of quests that they could choose from, and when they went into one of these quests, they would find a large amount of activities they could choose from based on what they wanted to learn. And this gave me the information I needed for my EdTech 532 Games and Simulation research that I did for this class. While taking these classes, these students experienced leveling up, competition, earning badges, and the feeling of accomplishment that accompanies the creation of one's own projects and sharing them collaboratively. And here you can see the Google spreadsheet I used to keep track of their points and their rank, where they were, and they could also see each other's. I didn't use any names for these students. I used their student number, so only they knew which one they were. And they could compare themselves to the other students in the class, thus causing competition between them. And they could also see which quests they were missing, which ones they might want to work on, and the scores that they earned for each quest. Their total XP, their percentage in the course, and the total XP for winning the game. This leveling up system seemed to work very well for us. It was just a Google Doc that was embedded into our Google site. I've been able to create web pages for a very long time. Most technology use comes easy to me, so when we were asked to create a few web-based projects in EdTech 502, the Internet for Educators, I was very excited. Little did I know the fresh approaches these projects held in store for me. As I worked through each of these projects, I tried to pay close attention to how the projects and lessons were constructed, as much as to doing the project itself. I could see the strong relationship to constructivism and realize the importance of providing students an example of the project and then letting them create their own project according to their own interests within the bounds of the project itself. Many of these projects created in 502 were double duty projects. Not only did I learn how to construct a project like this for my own students, I had actually created a project that could be used in my course with my students. The Creative Commons Essentials web quest was one of these projects. Prior to creating this lesson for my students, I had not heard of the Creative Commons. This web quest is an invaluable tool for me and will be for my students as well. This lesson was designed to fit in with the color scheme of the lesson pages at Richard McKenna Charter High School, and it has been easy to just slip right into my curriculum. As a matter of fact, I used this same web quest when I did the courses at Jefferson High School. If we go back to the computer apps course here, in Quest 4, did you cite that source? There's a link right here to the Creative Commons lesson. If I click on that, you see it opens the same lesson. And the students were allowed to work through this Creative Commons lesson that I created in EdTech 502. The virtual field trip is a project I may never formally use in my mathematics courses, but the concepts it taught me about utilizing multimedia and properly citing where it comes from are invaluable as I begin to redesign my own online courses to be more constructivist and to move them away from plain lecture-based lessons. In EdTech 506, Instructional Message Design, I worked with the properties of design itself. Design has always been my weak spot. I truly struggle with design. I know what I like when I look at the work of others, and I can even tell you why I like it. but to create something by myself out of thin air is like putting together a big puzzle for me. Maybe that's why I was so excited when my final project came together so well. As I worked through this course and applied each individual concept, such as typography, shape, graphic organizer, carp, figure ground, color and depth, organization and hierarchy, and color and space, I was able to see all the parts come together into one complete gestalt. I had created an entire fractions tutorial for my students who struggle with fractions. This project will be a valuable part of just-in-time or on-demand instruction in my courses. And this is an example of the tutorial that I created. Each tutorial comes into a blue page like this. I can go back to the main menu. And each one of these sections on the main menu is an individual tutorial for students to work through. In EDTECH 511, Interactive Courseware Design, I felt like I was in my element. I worked entirely in Flash to create a tutorial for my students. I've used an older version of Flash before and was well acquainted with its structure. But again, I was exposed to how a student might feel when faced with using a new software to create a project, when I had to download the newest version of Flash. Who knew a software could change so much between versions? For this project, I took a lesson from one of my courses that students notoriously stumble on and created a short tutorial with very few words that they could use to help cement the concept of front-end estimation. I've since embedded this tutorial into the online lesson and have seen a big jump in student understanding. Wow, I was amazed that one Flash-based interactive activity could make so much difference. It makes me want to redo all of my lessons. In EDTECH 513 Multimedia, I was exposed to a myriad of different types of projects, from a simple podcast, which I did on René Descartes, to a screencast, which I did for fractions for my basic math group, to the creation of a digital story, which I did for a nonprofit group in Second Life. When I started the Digital Story Project, I was helping a nonprofit group, Dream Realizations, create some projects in Second Life. I decided to merge the concept of doing a digital story with the technology of a machinima, which is making a video in a virtual world. This was a collaborative project that 3 of us worked on together. We collaborated on everything from doing the script in Google Docs to building the props in Second Life to actually filming the machinima while moving the avatar around in Second Life. I was able to experience what it feels like to work as a member of a team on a real-life project that would be used as a promotional piece in the future. There is much value in learning through actual hands-on experience. Through this type of learning, mistakes become solid learning blocks. When I started my journey at Boise State, I never dreamed that I would experience something so cutting edge that it had never been done before. But that is exactly what happened to me. Towards the end of my master's degree, I was fortunate enough to learn about game-based learning from Dr. Gibson and Chris Haskell in the Games and Simulations course. In this course, I experienced what it's like to incorporate game-based learning into teaching pedagogy. I experienced leveling up, earning badges, competing with my fellow classmates, and many other game-based learning strategies. While playing in the EdTech 532 course, Chris Haskell introduced me to one of Boise State's newest creations, the 3D Game Lab. We weren't able to use the newest version of it in the context of our course because it was in the final stages of construction, but I was able to be one of the original beta testers for it during the summer following my course. That beta test gave me the opportunity to have my own space within its shell for my students. As luck would have it, or maybe it was providence, things began to fall together quickly for me following my experience with 3D Game Lab. As I entered my last semester of actual coursework at BSU, I still had to take EdTech 512, Online Course Design. I am forever grateful that I left that course for last. In this course, I was tasked with creating an entire online course from start to finish. I felt ready. I had the theory behind me, I had the experiences of many different types of projects, and I had experienced game-based learning. I felt so ready for this. At the beginning of this semester, my boss from Richard McKenna Charter High School, Larry Slade, called me and asked if I had time to create 2 new courses for use at the school. The Idaho State Legislature had passed a law stating that all high school seniors, starting with the graduating class of 2013, must have 6 mathematics credits beginning with algebra to graduate, and they must take 2 of those credits during their senior year. They also wrote into that law that a senior that was not necessarily college-bound could take a math course called Mathematics of Personal Finance in their senior year. This course would consist of 2 parts. My boss had called me to ask me to create these courses. His timing was incredible. So as I worked through all the theory and project management tasks in EDTECH 512, I used the actual Mathematics of Personal Finance course for all of my work. However, I wasn't able to complete the entire course by the end of 512, so I applied to Boise State for an independent study course during my last semester to take concurrently with my portfolio course, in which I would be allowed to complete the first of the 2 Mathematics of Personal Finance courses all the way through to deployment and evaluation. At the end of my EdTech 512 course, my final project was the Mathematics of Personal Finance course for Richard McKenna Charter High School. And I wanted to take a minute at the end of my portfolio to just give you a brief look through of this course that I created. This course, the Mathematics of Personal Finance, was created in the Google Apps account of Richard McKenna so that only the students would be able to access this course. In this course, I created several areas. There's the course information, the contact information, the syllabus, the schedule, the assignments, the discussions area, and a link to the 3D game lab. In the assignments area, I created this so that students had a link to the game lab, but they also had links to the assignments so they could see all of them if they so wished to do so. Let's take a look at one in particular. If we go into a section such as the Develop a Career Plan into Module 2, you'll see that there are several quests, if you will, or actually these turned out to be quest chains in 3D Game Lab. Each one of these, I was able to develop several quests around each topic. One thing in particular that I did learn through my master's degree at Boise State was that examples are so important for students. I know that when I had a class where I was given an example of what I was to create, it was so much easier for me to create than if I didn't have an example. So I made sure to include examples of what I was asking the students to do. For instance, they have an example of what their website could look like, and then they have example pages that show them what their projects also could look like. They're not bound to make their projects exactly like this, but it's an example of what they could do. The other thing I wanted to show was the discussions page. I had a difficult time figuring out how I was going to incorporate discussions into a Google site, but I learned that there's something called the Google Groups, and the Google Groups were very easy to embed on a page into my Google site. So here's my Google Groups discussion forum, and I've embedded it on this page in my Google site. And these are each of the discussions that the students will participate in right here in one place. And I think this is going to make it much easier to have the discussion area built right into the site itself. Now from here we can jump to 3D Game Lab. I already have it open, so I'm going to go up here and open it because it took a second to load. So in 3D Game Lab I have my list of quests and so on. I'm currently working on the first of these 2 courses, and I'm designing it in this realm of 3D Game Lab. This course is game-based, and it provides the elements of choice, competition, levels, badges. Let me give you a look at the badges. If I click on rewards, you can see all of the badges and the achievements and the just fun rewards down there at the bottom. And everything else that I've built into this goes along with the game-based concepts. I'm really having a blast creating this course, but more than that, my actual pedagogical thinking about the linearity of learning is evolving and changing, and I have had so much fun putting this portfolio together and working through each of these courses at Boise State. Thank you. Well, you've come to the end of my portfolio video, and I've come to the end of my master's degree. And I believe I've met my goal of adapting my pedagogical thinking to be more in line with the new theories of learning that have embraced the emerging technologies. I also feel I have caught myself up with the technology that's ever present around us. My new goal is to find a way to keep caught up with all of this. I believe I can do this with the help of professional development currently being offered by Boise State and through carefully selected personal learning networks. But most of all, I believe I can realize this goal by using what I've learned in the redesign of my courses to make them more engaging, experiential, interactive, and just plain fun for my students. There's no better teacher than experience itself. Thank you for watching my EdTech portfolio video reflection.